NAACP is the nation's oldest civil rights organization, started 111 years ago. And it was created in the aftermath of what many people understand to be the redemption period. And that was a period of retaliation by Southern whites who took up arms against this nation, and they lost their citizenship. And they took up arms to maintain a system of dominating and controlling modes of productions through the use of slavery and enslaving people from the African continent. As a result of those Africans, and I say Africans because they were not citizens of the United States, they were denied knowledge of their countries of origins on the continent. Those individuals fighting for their liberations, taking up arms, reinforcing Union troops, reinforcing Sherman's army that marched through the South, resulting in the defeating of this concept of white supremacy, a concept that was not only seen in the United States, but had begun to spread across the globe. A concept that's based on a racial social construct that excluded many people from being a part of that privileged posture, I will call it. All of us on this call, whether you was a member of the Jewish faith, if you were Catholic, if you was from the African continent, if you was from Italy, and many other countries or beliefs, you were isolated outside of the concept of being white. White was only reserved for those who were Anglo-Saxon Protestants. So if you didn't believe in the same things, if you didn't come from the same region of Europe, you was excluded from this construct of being white. In the United States, we carried that caste system to another level. Now we've seen caste systems in other countries, particularly in India. And in India, is perhaps the most pervasive, and that's debatable depending on one's perspective. So the NAACP was created in that backdrop, and it was a group of African Americans by this time because they took up arms and they fought in the Civil War. They defeated the Confederate troops. They were rewarded with the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment. And I'm going through this history because I understand this is a global audience, so we have a really context of why the NAACP exists and our roles moving forward. With the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment to our Constitution, it gave those Africans who are now American citizens rights and privileges entitled to any other citizen in this country. And that period lasted about 10 years, called Reconstruction. And during the Reconstruction period, it was contentious because the true nature of the Civil War had more to do with economic systems than it did with the morality of holding people in bondage. It was whether or not rich, quote, white guys in the North could establish an industrial-based economy as their mode of production to generate wealth, or rich white guys in the South can maintain an agricultural-based economy, which was overly dependent on the bondage of human to produce and generate the raw materials for sale to the superpowers of the time in Europe. That was the true nature of the Civil War, which is really important now because it was about money. It was about control of modes of production. It was about controlling and dominating systems. You fast forward, you had a group of African Americans, W.E.B. Du Bois and William Monroe Trotter, Ida B. Wells, who decided to meet to begin to address the sharp turn and policy direction from honoring the commitment of the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment of our Constitution and allowing African Americans to truly participate as citizens, both with their labor, their ability to collectively bargain. And there was a sharp pushback against that. Former Confederate soldiers, as a result of another business deal that were cut, were readmitted back into the Union, and they aggressively began to push a set of policies that excluded African Americans, a set of policies that excluded the Jewish community, that excluded Irish who happened to be Catholic, that excluded so many people who didn't fall under the definition of a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. So they formed the Niagara movement. That very next year, there was a race riot in Springfield, Illinois. And there were a group of individuals, Mary Wright Overton and others, some of the Jewish faith, who decided, say, we cannot have the necessary protection as a community, as a Jewish community, as an Irish community, if we don't band together and establish an advocacy organization to set a public policy federal framework to protect people, because lynching became so commonplace that one historian said there was a person lynched every day for an entire year. So the group of individuals in response to for the Springfield lynching, and the group of African Americans, they agreed to meet in New York. And out of that meeting, they established the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People. African Americans were
this
identified
was
as colored.
the result of minorities coming together, in a sense.
That was absolutely the result of minorities coming together, fusion politics at its best, establishing an advocacy voice to protect all of us in a federal policy landscape that honored our individual equal rights to fully engage. Really important, because in the American legal system, your status is important for your protection. The first advocacy program we took on was anti-lynching legislation that gave the federal government the ability to go into local jurisdictions to investigate, prosecute, and convict those involved with this mob violence that we see also common across the country. The second big campaign we took on was in response to a motion picture release in 1915 called Birth of a Nation. And in this release, this is really important for both the African American community and the Jewish community. This movie depicted the savagery of these Africans who were descended upon the virtual nature of this white woman, and how they had captured her, and the cavalry came in and they wore these sheets over their head, and it was the Ku Klux Klan, the Christian Knights of the Ku Klux Klan, who ride in and save the damsel in distress. That organization that was founded by former Confederate soldiers who were defeated during the Civil War, that organization that during this period of time was actually fledgling and dying off, received more energy, so much so by 1930, we've seen a reemergence of the Klan. NAACP, we advocated against the movement. We pushed to stop the release. We pushed for the President Woodrow Wilson from not showing the film in the White House. But because he showed that film in the White House, because this became a blockbuster film, we found that many of those same individuals, whether you came from the Jewish community, the Irish community, the Black community, were now under attack. In Boston, Irish need not apply. There were many schools that barred admission to individuals who practice in the Jewish faith, part of the Jewish community. African Americans, because our skin tone cannot rub off, we can't change our names, we cannot speak a different version of the English, the King's English, so to speak. We were always going to be readily identified as a cheap, readily available, cheap source of labor. And because of that, we continue with our mission to improve the quality of life of those who are impacted, but most importantly, to fight against discrimination wherever it exists.